Hey, Cathy, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Let's play 2 truths and a lie for the audience.
Okay.
All right.
You go first.
2 truths and 1 lie. 1, I am the oldest of 5 boys in my family. 2, I'm a cat person. And 3, I have a very strange phobia of windmills. What are your 2 truths and a lie?
Well, mine are that I love spicy food. I speak 4 languages and I am a twin.
I think I know the lie.
This is Truth Pop. This is Truth Pop with Jake and Cathy.
What do you think it is?
I'm going to go with the languages because like if you were to get really mad at me, then you probably would start, shouting in some foreign language that I didn't know.
It's true. I only speak English and just un poco español.
More than I know.
For you, I'm going to guess that your lie is that you are a cat person because you absolutely love dogs.
Yeah, Chloe, the Truth Pup, the official Truth Pup mascot, she would be infuriated with me if I were a cat person and would not allow any cats into this. Welcome to Truth Pop. I'm Jake.
I'm Cathy.
Giving you a Catholic take on faith and culture. On this podcast, we help you to live out your faith in modern day society. Be sure to subscribe to Truth Pop wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, if you wouldn't mind giving a rating too, just gives us good feedback. On this episode, the question is, how do you find God in the media? How do you know what you're watching or what you're listening to is good, true, and beautiful? Like, it's not always clear cut, right? It's not always black and white. But I think as Catholics, we do need to be intentionally discerning about what it is that we're consuming in our lives, because it's affecting us, and maybe it's affecting us in ways we don't realize. Like, there's so many lies in some of the music I used to listen to, and some of those lies told me in the past that I'm not good enough, or they reminded me of my past sin, my past shame. And I realized I needed to cut that out. Like, I love that verse, Philippians 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on those things. So I think, talking in this episode, Cathy, finding good media, finding God in the media, it's all about finding the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Yeah. And I think in order to find the good, the true, and the beautiful, we have to go back and remember our human condition. We have to go back to Genesis and realize how we were created and what we were created for. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says, God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. We were made in the image of God. We were made to be good and to do good. And therefore, we are attracted to beauty and to good because that's what we were made for. However, if you look ahead a little bit further to Genesis chapter 3, that's when we experience the fall. That is when Adam and Eve disobeyed God by eating the fruit from the tree that they were told not to eat from. After they disobeyed God, this caused the stain of original sin to enter humanity. And we're all affected with it. We all have a proclivity to sin. We all have a proclivity to things that aren't good for us. So we need to be honest about that. We need to be aware that we are drawn to both beauty and evil. We also need to remember that what we consume does have an effect on us. Just like what we eat, it can affect our bodies. It can affect our health, our nutrition. What we watch, what we listen to, the types of media that we consume can affect us. And therefore, our minds and our souls can be shaped by the media that we consume. So it's important that we learn how to control what we watch and what we consume rather than it controlling us. So Matthew chapter 23, verse 37 states that the greatest commandments are that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. when we look for lies in the media, we can base it after these two commandments.
I think it's true. Like the lies that a lot of media tells us, it goes back to the fall of Adam and Eve. It goes back to that shame that they experienced after they sinned and ate the fruit, right? So the lie is that humans can objectify each other. The lie is that humans can degrade one another. And I think that can just take so many different elements, like in terms of shows where there's violence, like that's clear, right? And it's crazy, babe. Like I'm thinking about this, like sometimes there's a TV show where I don't like the character and then I get excited when the TV character gets killed off.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait, like I know this isn't a real thing, but I wouldn't think that way in real life. Do we look at one another based off of what we're taught on a TV show? And I think it's just super subconscious, but it's like that slippery slope. Like the more we might listen to certain kinds of music, the more we might look at human beings in terms of objectification and what we can get out of them. So that's the lie that I'm not worthy, that I don't have human dignity, the lie that the other person isn't worthy of respect and love. And also I think the lie that God isn't good, the lie that God isn't real, or that he's not worthy of praise. Like even, some of the shows that are normally okay to watch, I'll notice they'll just like throw in a quick jab at God or church or religion. And I'm like, man, they didn't need to put that in there. And I think all of those little lies can add up to something big, to the point that it affects our worldview. It creates this, to use an analogy from Instagram, it creates a false filter through which we see the world. It creates a bad lens to which we can no longer see the world the way that God intended it to be. And that can be harmful. That can really affect us. I know it's affected me. I again, just kind of going back to what I was saying about music, like when I was listening to a lot of pop music in college, it was crazy how much it really started to affect relationships in the way I approach dating, just looking at relationships in terms of selfishness and what I can get out of it. And then also just falling into sin. And I can just pinpoint it to the music that I was listening to. And then when I cut that off, I noticed such a difference, that God was giving me a different way to see the world.
Yeah, I think, with whatever we're watching or listening to, are we trying to numb ourselves or are we trying to edify ourselves? I know I really like to binge watch shows because they're just so easily accessible, like on Hulu or Netflix. And I think it's really important to have the virtue of temperance whenever we are consuming any type of media. The Catechism states that temperance is the moral virtue that moderates the attraction of pleasure and provides the balance in the use of created goods. So when we have temperance, that virtue it's basically, a virtue is a habit. It's the habit of being able to tell yourself no when it's been enough. So when we have temperance, we can be in control of what we're watching rather than letting it control us.
It's like that verse, babe, Matthew 18:9. Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, take it and throw it away. It's better for you to only have one eye and live forever than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell. And obviously God's not telling us to poke our eyes out, thank goodness. Although, side note, our family's dog did lose an eye, so maybe he's going to get some extra bounty points and end up in heaven, but that's for another day. But I will say, yeah, it's hard, but I think that's the point. It's supposed to be hard. Like, we are called to cut things off if they're not good, true, and beautiful. Maybe we're called to step away from something for a time. Maybe we're called to watch something else that's even better. And Cathy, I think the good news in all of this is that there is so many good entertainment choices out there now. Hollywood's starting to finally wake up to the point that making movies that are good, true, and beautiful can actually make money. The Chosen, Jesus Revolution, everything Angel Studios is doing. There's a lot of good content that's starting to come out. And you might have your own list of things that you enjoy. That's great. And maybe it's just because so many of like the mainstream Hollywood companies are like just getting so off track to where like so many new companies can step in and start to provide a Christian worldview. And it doesn't mean you're watching stuff that's boring. Again, like God does not want you to be bored. He wants you to be invigorated. He wants you to live a life that's good. You know, it's just like sitting down and having a good steak. Like you feel good, like you feel refreshed. And that's kind of the way that I feel when I listen to a lot of Christian music lately. Like that's actually something that, stay tuned for future projects with Truth Pop, but I'm not going to get into specifics right now. But Truth Pop is really hoping to continue to just step into that space to provide good, clean, godly content for you so that you don't have to feel like you're just cutting out your eye and then you're miserable living under a rock like Patrick and SpongeBob. Like God wants you to experience joy and to experience goodness. So I just challenge you to take that into prayer, like ask God, okay, what am I watching? What am I listening to that's not good? Am I willing to cut that out? And what do I want to replace that with?
And one thing that we can remember in this day and age of technology and social media, we have the ability to create our own content, which is pretty amazing. Like I was just reading about Blessed Carlo Acutis, and he died in 2006, but he was really good at computers. He made movies about his pets, and like his dog was like a superhero, and it was really funny. And that's something we could do. You know, we can use YouTube. We can create a podcast. You know, we can
hint.
We can create media that is true, good, and beautiful, and we can change the world because of it.
This is Truth Pop.